Hamas has accused Israel of indiscriminate and continuous destruction of Gaza, a development it says is causing delay in locating captives' bodies. This followed the allegation by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Hamas is refusing to return bodies of slain Israelis following the ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has reaffirmed his determination to pressure Hamas to locate and return the remains of the dead hostages still held down in Gaza. Speaking at a memorial for victims of the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023, Netanyahu vowed that Israel will continue fighting terrorism with full force until every last fallen hostage is brought home. This declaration came shortly after Hamas returned bodies of 2 additional hostages, but said it could not access the remains of 19 others. For the situation in the Middle East, I'm now joined by global policy analyst Alexander von Rugen. Thank you very much for being here. Israel's Netanyahu has accused Hamas of refusal to release slain Israelis to him after the ceasefire deal, while Hamas is also alleging that Israel's continued bombardment made it difficult to release the bodies. Could you put this situation in proper perspective?
Well, as you know, there was a 20-point agreement that President Trump had stipulated for the ceasefire and the movement to peace in Gaza. The first point of the 20-point was the unconditional release of all living hostages and the return of the deceased ones. I think it's plausible to know that returning the living was more important than the deceased, because they're still alive and their families are putting a great pressure on the Israeli government to have pushed for the release of the hostages. I think what we see now is a politicization of the deceased. Now, as we all know, Hamas had a network of tunnels throughout Gaza, and the IDF was systematically bombing those tunnels in their fight against Hamas. I would think it's very plausible that in keeping the remains of the deceased hostages, they would have been stored in those tunnels. And if those tunnels were bombed, it could pose some difficulty in removing them in an expeditious manner. So I can't pass judgment on whether Hamas is stalling or they have a plausible reason for delaying the return. Ultimately here, both sides are accomplishing something, though. This is ironic because Netanyahu did not want to have a ceasefire. He wanted to keep the conflict going. It kept him in power. No reigning president has ever been dethroned in the middle of a war. And Netanyahu has problems within his own government. It's a minority government. He's been kept afloat by the ultra-Orthodox pro-right side of the party government, which did not want a ceasefire. So he's got pressure from them. At the same time, he has charges of corruption being thrown at him by members of parliament. There's an ongoing investigation. And he has ICC and International Criminal Court, as well as International Court of Justice charges against him. So perpetuating this conflict, or at least keeping the in status quo, is important for him. With Hamas, they have the same reason. They don't want to give up their guns yet. They want to be the policing party in Palestine. So this plays into them keeping the status quo. And here we have a stalemate on deceased bodies, which really are, I'm not going to be morally incorrect in saying it, but they're less important than the live parties, and certainly less important to going for peace in the region.
All right. How are these counter-accusations about non-compliance with the ceasefire plan by both parties likely to impact the prospects of a lasting peace agreement? I mean, fears are already coming up.
I don't think, we all hope the peace prevails. Is it a stalling tactic? Absolutely. Because the next provisions in the 20-point agenda is that Hamas surrenders all their weapons and they either stay with a pardon or they leave Gaza. And I don't think they're ready to do that yet.
What mechanisms can be put in place? Some would say this is a bit early, but the question has to be asked to ensure accountability for alleged war crimes and human rights violations committed during the conflict. And how can the international community perhaps exact on both parties to ensure compliance with the ceasefire agreement and facilitate a peaceful resolution of the conflict?
The only way to accomplish that is to put in an international stabilizing force, which has already been negotiated by President Trump. As it stands, I believe it's going to be a combination of Indonesia, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan, which will have their boots on the ground in Gaza. In addition, Jordan and Egypt will be training Palestinian police to police themselves. Oversight of that will be by President Trump himself, and he's currently got 200 American specialists in Egypt to assist and oversee the matter, but not to have boots on the ground in Gaza. So to implement this on an expeditious way, it's going to take affirmative force, which President Trump has been known to do. You will note there's been very little mention of UN peacekeeping forces or UN involvement other than humanitarian supply chains of food and resources. So I think that's the only way it's going to be accomplished. Or if it's not, and if it's ruled by a committee, I think you're going to find the usual. It's going to be paralysis through analysis. Affirmative action has to be taken, and has to be taken quickly, and I believe President Trump is going to force that issue sooner than later.
Well, let's remain hopeful, I guess, that this peace deal holds. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, as always.